So let's talk about this chapter, My Hero Academia. It's gonna be a short review because I really don't have much to say about this other than some parts about the Vestige world and then the whole Toga situation. I want to talk about these two things specifically because it really fascinated me, okay? Starting with the Vestige world, something that really stood out to me was how All For One is kind of talking about the memories of old users and how they actually kind of transfer over to the All For One user if he takes someone's quirk, for example. Now, this is something that I've never even thought about, to be honest, because even though it's kind of expected and sort of obvious when you think about it, I don't know, it's just something that never really came to mind for me. Like, even though we have this whole situation happening with One For All, I never really expected something like that to really happen with All For One, even though it should have been blatantly obvious when you look at it in hindsight. So he obviously explained how he has been experiencing other people's experiences and memories, through this sort of exchange of quirks, right? And he's just sort of figured out a way to just kind of shut that out in a way, especially after he got in contact with Ujiko, who obviously helped him to sort of figure this stuff out on some level. Now, what I really found interesting though about this chapter in the Vestige world, that is, it's actually Shimura's interaction with Shigaraki, because this is something that everyone has been waiting for, to see how Shigaraki would react finding out that Shimura was killed by All For One. Now, it doesn't necessarily state that All For One killed her, but I'm pretty sure Shigaraki managed to figure it out, given that she's a One For All user, he's All For One. He knows All For One has always kind of been battling One For All. And despite that, he doesn't really start to hate All For One. I mean, he already kind of did hate him, but this doesn't really seem to spark any further hate. And that is something that I find to be cool, because a lot of people thought that this revelation would actually spark some sort of exceptional hatred towards All For One in Shigaraki, whereas that didn't actually happen at all. Instead, Shigaraki kind of just brushes it off like, I don't care about the reasons, but that goes for you too. That's pretty much what he said. Like, he does not give a shit about Shimura being his grandmother. Like, there's no redeeming Shigaraki at this point, which most of us already knew, but with this chapter, if his grandmother can't do it, nobody can, let's be honest, okay? Because he looked up to his grandmother a lot as a kid, and right now, that doesn't even matter to him. Like, that's his old life. That Shigaraki or that Tenko doesn't even exist anymore. After the Vestige world stuff kind of finishes off, we see how this battle is supposedly over, finally. I mean, I didn't mind the long fight between Shigaraki, Deku, and everyone else in this sort of part of the arc, but it's kind of cool to see that it's finally over and we're gonna move on to something else. And by the looks of it, we're going to be moving on to something regarding Toga, because at the end of the chapter, we see a really interesting thing with Toga. She's starting to question the heroes. I mean, obviously, she's already on the opposite end of the heroes. She doesn't really support them, but what she says is really cool, because she's essentially saying that the heroes are supposed to be valuing everyone's lives, right? And because they killed twice, are they not counting him as a person? Is he not as valuable as any other living being? Now, this is really interesting because she's kind of looking towards the students to ask them how this comes, and they're finally gonna find out that a hero killed twice. Now, to them, that may not seem like a huge deal because they're not really been in the hero society for that long. They may not even be completely aware of all of the policies that a hero has to abide by. But for those who don't know, killing is a fucking taboo as a hero, okay? Unless it's absolutely necessary, which in my opinion, killing twice was absolutely necessary. But not everyone's going to understand that. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how, whenever Toga finds these students, how they're gonna react to learn this information and how they're gonna respond as well, because I think their view of the world is gonna be very different from Pro Hero's view of the world, especially the older ones, because the students, they're essentially going to be shaping a new world, if you ask me. Like, that's kind of what it's building up to. The students are essentially going to try to create a new hero society, a different one. And finding out this information could be crucial to that, in my opinion. I think finding out that Hawks killed twice could be very important in how they're going to view the world from the next chapter onwards. Anyway, I'm going to end the review here. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. And as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and remember, Toga is waifu, Toga is laifu.